Serving their community is who they are because they love where they live. REMAX 3D Real Estate is proud to bring you Heart of Greenville, a video series dedicated to celebrating all the wonderfully great things about Greenville, Texas. On every episode, Dennisha Denney will share Greenville's story through the stories of people who call Greenville home. This is Heart of Greenville.
Thank you so much for watching Heart of Greenville. I asked Rich Carter to come on the show because I wanted you to get to know the man behind being the leader and CEO of the Greenville Hospital. We all know him in that role, but I wanted you to really get to know him as a person and as a citizen of Greenville. I think you'll enjoy hearing his story of how he arrived and what he loves about Greenville. Here's my conversation with Rich. Hey y'all, I'm Dennisha Denney, your host of Heart of Greenville, and today we're sitting on the third floor at the landmark on Lee Street at The Landing, and I have a very special guest today, Mr. Rich Carter, who is the CEO of our local hospital. How are you today, Rich?
I'm doing very well. Thank you, Dennisha.
Thank you so much for agreeing to come on the show.
My pleasure.
I only had to twist your arm like 5 or 6 times.
Well, you know how it goes sometimes.
Well, to be fair, I did catch you in the middle of COVID. So
Yes, it's been a long year, so we can talk about that if we need to.
Okay, well, we can in a little bit, but I want people to get to know you. So the purpose of our show on Heart of Greenville is for people to get to know the stories behind the people in our community. And so I really want them to see the other side of you. I get to serve alongside with you in Rotary and doing service projects.
Right.
At church, with the mission trips. And so I want people to know some of those things. But I don't know that everyone knows. How did you get to Greenville?
Well, I drove in my car.
Okay, Rich. So it's going to be like that.
You want a little more detail?
Can we have a little more details
A little
than that?
more detail. Okay.
Like, where did you drive from?
Okay. Well, my job took me here. So I was recruited by the board of directors back in 1995.
Oh, wow.
To come join, it was called Presbyterian of Greenville Hospital at that point in time. I was residing in North Carolina, in western North Carolina, and so I moved the family out here, and that took place in early 96, and we've been here ever since.
Wow. I knew you'd been here for a long time, but I couldn't have told you it was that
I have.
long.
I came when I was 4.
So, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yes, it is.
So you had a family at 4. That doesn't
maybe,
work out.
Maybe I need to redo my math on that. I was 24. How
24.
about that?
Okay, that's better.
Okay.
That works out better. I'm like, okay, well, how did Marlon fit into that?
Yeah,
if
there
you
you
were 4?
go. Good idea.
So y'all have 3 kiddos.
We do. 3 children who are all Greenville High School graduates.
Yes.
And doing well in life, I'm pleased to say.
Man, that's an accomplishment to be able to say you got 3 of them out of the house.
It is, and gainfully employed, and 2 of them live in the Dallas area. 1 in Prosper. Michael, my oldest, he's a doctor. He's an ER physician, and he lives in Prosper. My second child, Taylor, is a boy, and he is an engineer. He works for Duke Power in Charlotte, North Carolina. And then my daughter, Lindsay, is a realtor, and she works for a group in Dallas. So.
That's awesome.
I get to see 2 of the 3 fairly regularly. The 1 in North Carolina, not so often.
Right.
But we have quality time, just not quantity time, right?
It really is. I've noticed that between my mom and my brother. He lives out in San Francisco, and it's like those visits are so intentional when that family member's further away.
It is.
But we take for granted that the other ones are only like an hour away. And
that's right.
So we don't seem to do it as, it's not quality, like you said, but we did as quantity.
You bet.
Well, that's awesome. So how did you get to Greenville, though? Were you looking for a spot? Were you looking for a new place? Or did someone actually reach out to you?
I was working with a group called Quorum, and I was actually doing a temporary assignment for them. This is interesting. It's interesting the way that the Lord works, okay? Mm-hmm. So I was working a temporary assignment for them, trying to transition out a CEO in Mount Pleasant.
Oh.
So they asked me to go to Mount Pleasant and help the transition. So I said, okay. And it's a 90-day thing, so it's not a big deal. But so when I was there, a recruiter that I had known, he wasn't working with me or for me or anything or anybody at that point, but he knew me, and And he called me and says, "Man, I got the perfect job for you. I'm not working the account, but this place is just you." And I said, "Okay, what is it?" He says, "It's Greenville, Texas." So that's 60 miles down the road, right? From where I was doing this temporary assignment.
Oh, wow.
And so I sent in my CV, just kind of, wondering, don't even know. And then they invited me for an interview, and then they invited me back for another interview, and then they invited me back to make a job offer, and I accepted it, and I came. So it was fun.
That's really cool. I didn't know that part of the story. You really were just up the road.
Just up the road, just in a temporary deal.
So how did Marlon feel about that, from leaving
North
Carolina and coming to Texas?
Well, Western North Carolina is about the most beautiful place in the world.
Really?
I mean, it's, in the Smokies and all that kind of stuff. But the economy there was pretty weak back in the 90s. So, you had to balance, the beauty of the landscape versus the economic opportunities. And really this was a God thing anyway. So, the Lord was leading me and leading us, and he made it abundantly clear that this is what you're doing. So I think the decision wasn't that hard, and Marlon and the children, because they were about 10, 5, or 10, 7, and 2 at that point in time. So they were all supportive of as well,
Right.
and it's worked out good. Although I will say that my children's first step into Greenville was not that successful.
Oh, really?
You want to
Tell
know what?
that
You want to know what
story.
happened?
Yes, tell me the
Okay.
story.
So my daughter, who was 2, maybe 3 at that time, so we drove up in our car or whatever it was, a van maybe. We had a conversion van at that point in time. But anyway, so first thing she does in our rental house that we had, she steps out into the yard, stands right into a pile of fire ants.
Oh, no.
So her first and their first experience in Greenville, Texas, was getting my 3-year-old daughter out of the fire ant pile and settling her down. So
Oh, no.
that is probably not a story she remembers. So I don't know that you need to remind her of that. So
Well, when she goes back to watch this, then you can remind her of
that's
that.
right. That is in my mind.
How funny. Well, it's not funny that it happened, but it's funny that it stuck in your mind. She
It
must
did.
have been
It did.
screaming and
Well,
terrified.
you know how fire ants are. Of course, she didn't know what
Yes.
fire ants were. She's like, "What are those things on my feet? Up on legs? Oh no!"
Oh, bless her heart.
Yeah.
Well, she embraced Greenville, but man, she went on and did some great things and lived an adventurous life too. So
She has. Yes, she has. They all have.
yes, they have. And it has to make you so proud for Michael to be a doctor and be in the same industry and same field. And
He's doing very well, and he's doing what he loves, and he's helping, and he was very involved in the COVID situations and being on the front lines and all that. So yes, we're real proud of him.
that probably had to be interesting to hear his perspective from the doctor standpoint of COVID, and you're making decisions for the hospital
Right.
for COVID, and
Right.
hearing you got to hear it from your doctors as well, but hearing
Yeah.
other perspectives are always good.
And it's very similar from one organization to the next. I mean, we're all worried about PPE availability, and we're worried about how do we protect the staff, and how do we provide care in this environment where either the patient or you have to be kind of isolated
Right.
from each other. And so it made it very, very difficult, and the stress that goes along with that for the providers was very dramatic, and still is to this day a little bit. But we're really glad that the COVID experience has diminished significantly from what it was. So we're real happy about that.
Man, what were some of your thoughts when this first started coming down the pike and you started learning about it? And I mean, as the leader for our healthcare in Hunt County.
I think initially, like most other people, you're thinking, well, that's probably not going to come here. That's. I mean, how many times have we heard about the bird flu or the pig flu or the whatever flu or whatever virus, and then 6 months later you're like, whatever happened with that? So I think so. Originally, everybody was kind of under the same umbrella that, well, that's probably not going to happen like they think, but it did.
It did.
And so it's going to be real interesting going forward in the future when the next bird flu comes. How are people going to react?
Right.
How's the world going to react? So those dynamics have changed a little bit. So we'll see.
I bet.
Yeah.
So, but was it hard for you? I mean, were you having to make those final decisions about certain things, and how did you navigate that?
Well, I don't make them by myself. We have a team of people, our administrative council, as I call them, about 5 people. Very good people, very smart people, smarter than me. Certainly when you talk about, nursing and infection control, and there's a lot of financial issues surrounding this too, and so you've got to have really good people. And so we made them as a team, and that's one of the beauties of working in a place like Greenville or at Hunt Regional is that you have a close-knit family organization that you can work together and you can challenge each other and you can accomplish and solve problems, and it's just amazing to watch people like that who are 110% invested in trying to do the right thing, but also trying to do what's best for the community and trying to solve things. And it's just not us 5, for example, one of our most creative ideas is we have an ultraviolet system that sterilizes areas. And one of our leaders, not one of our 5, but one of the other departmental leaders, actually over housekeeping, he came up with the idea, well, why can't we use that ultraviolet system to reprocess our PPE masks? Because you couldn't find them. You couldn't buy them. You could buy them for like $3 a piece.
Right.
When we're used to getting them for 3 cents a piece.
Right. If you could even get them here in time.
Yeah. So we were like, okay. So we did a little research on it, and it was proven to be allowable, and so we set up a reprocessing system, and we opened it up to doctors' offices and other facilities and some things like that. And that was just extremely creative.
Wow.
And so to see those things happen, it's amazing.
That's really cool. We do have really good people at the hospital.
We do.
I mean, everyone that I've encountered, their hearts are in it.
Yeah.
And I don't know how the doctors and nurses have kept up and kept that positive attitude and the things that they've had to go through dealing with just with the COVID part, not to mention everything else that still goes on.
Oh, absolutely.
Nothing else stopped. We still
Absolutely.
had all the other issues too. And
Absolutely.
they've done a really good job to do that.
I'm really proud of us as an organization and what we've achieved. And I've been here for like 26 years now.
Is that uncommon for a CEO of a hospital?
It's pretty uncommon. And, sometimes you'll get larger organizations where somebody can move up the ranks. They'll start off as an assistant and move up and move up and move up and move up. And eventually, be the CEO of the system maybe.
Right.
And they'll have been there for 25 or 30 years. But in a freestanding, independent hospital like us, it's pretty uncommon. And so I think it's just a good blend of having a very stable and honest board of directors, which there's 9 publicly elected people in Hunt County, if you're not familiar with that. And so we had a really good, stable board, and who communicated well. And then whenever there's changes in the board, which there's always some change, they were on the right page. And so mostly when CEOs turn over, it's because they're either moving up the chain, they're wanting something bigger, or maybe in a different community.
Right.
Or there's physician or medical staff dissatisfaction, or board director, or whoever the manager is dissatisfaction if you're not in an independent hospital. So I was fortunate and blessed in many ways that everything was pretty stable throughout the years. Well, we had a few ups and downs. We had a few years where the financials were pretty rough, and we've had some years where the financials were pretty good.
I know when you present those to our foundation board, the
Yes.
hospital foundation board that I'm serving on, and I see those numbers, my heart kind of stops sometimes, because you guys do a great job of managing that.
Yeah.
It's not like there's this big overage sitting there.
Well, the reimbursement system that we have to live within, whether it's Medicare, Medicaid, commercial insurance, is incredibly complex and
Yes.
sophisticated. It's unlike anything else in the world. And it takes a level of patience and faith, and just to be able to maneuver all of that stuff, and hope hope that you're getting it right, because it is crazy difficult.
It really is. It
Yeah.
is. So I commend all of you guys that do that and
thank you.
make it all work and fight
Well,
for us. I know you have to get in there and grovel sometimes and fight.
You do. We fight with insurances all the time, and I can give you some more stories on that, but I don't think we're here for that. But we have to fight with them and try and get what we're due, and so that we can pay our people, so that we can provide the service, so that we can. We have a large charitable burden in Hunt County, as you know. It's
That's
like
right.
12 or 13%. Last year was like $75 million, and so we've got to create funds to pay for that. And it's and one of the things I really love about what I do is I get to create a system or an environment that helps that to happen. And that's a blessing that that I never would have thought about when I was going through my college career, which was just a few years ago, I think.
That's right.
Yeah, and you don't think about those things, but it's just fun to be a part of and to see it work.
Right. You must love Greenville, because you could have done the same thing. You could have gotten these years of experience. You've built great things and made a lot of wonderful changes in the hospital. You could have said, hey, here's my resume, and gone on to bigger and better cities. And you've chosen not to. You've also chosen to stay in Greenville. So let's talk about that for a minute.
Okay.
What do you love about Greenville, and what's kept you here with your family and so connected?
Well, I think part of that was you want stability with your family. And so I wanted my children not to be skipping around from school to school to school, which can easily happen with a director or CEO, every 3 or 4 years, and you're on to something else. That can easily happen. I didn't want that for my children. That's not what I had growing up. So maybe I'm stuck in my rut, but that was a good rut.
I don't think it's a bad one.
No, and so I wanted that. And so my daughter was 3 years old or so when I got here, and so that's 15 years. I never expected that to happen. Honestly, you don't.
No.
You don't expect that to happen. But that was the desire, that was the goal, that was the wish, and otherwise, I think it's just where God wants me to be, where the Lord has put me, and with the church and what I've been able to participate in there, and in the mission field, and growing my faith, and all these kind of things, and I think once you're, if you're within God's will, you're under His umbrella. That's where joy is, and doesn't mean that's where perfection is, but it's where God's joy is, and so that's where you're meant to be, and so that's what happened.
That's right. I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. So let's talk about church.
Sure.
Our family fellowship
Right.
is where we both
Right.
go to church.
Right.
And I know that you've served on several mission trips. So
Correct.
let's talk about that. What inspired you to do that? Maybe tell me a couple of stories from your mission
Oh,
trips.
it's with me, it's not just one thing. It's always multiple things, and so in the mission trips that our church sponsors, they're evangelical. I mean, 100% evangelical. But we also do some healthcare things. So the one thing I've learned how to do, and we haven't been there for a few years because of COVID and stuff, but is eye tests. So there's some simple ways to do eye evaluations, and then offer these people some glasses. Mostly readers' glasses. There's different kinds of readers' glasses, different strengths, and so you can determine. So we do some of that. A lot of evangelical things. Of course, they're speaking a different language than we are, which is a struggle. But also, what I enjoy about it is it's an adventure. So where we go is off the beaten path. So often we have to trek into where we're going, or canoe up the river to where we're going. There's no roads. There's no vehicles.
Wow.
These are native peoples of Nicaragua and Honduras typically, who have not seen outsiders. We've been to a few places where they, if you would have gone with your blonde hair, you'd be the rock star, because they'd never seen anybody with blonde hair before.
That's so wild. You don't think about that.
No,
here.
no. And so when the Americans come to town, it's a big to-do.
I bet.
And so we have a great opportunity to share the gospel, and we're led by native pastors and things like that. So they do 90% of it. We're just there to look good, I think. But be the Americans, and to let them know that we're and do whatever we can with respect to the health side of things. So part of it is just it's an adventure, and that's what I kind of liked about it as well. And so it's been fun.
It is fun. I went on the Philippines mission trip, and so it was like that over there when I went over, and Steve Johnson kind of warned me a little bit just because I do look so different, know, but it wasn't my skin color. It wasn't my hair color. It was my skin color that in their culture, the lighter skinned you are, then it had to do with like being healthy and things like that. And so I was viewed very differently, but I was glad he prepared me for that. And I'm glad that they do the cultural classes before you go, because the cultures are different. And so it does prepare you to go, but it also prepares you for why you're there, and carrying on, about Jesus. And so getting to be that example. And I know that one mission trip changed my life.
It does.
Environments.
When you see people who are so much less fortunate than we, and we come back to the States and we're like, well, gosh, nobody's really poor here.
No.
Even the poor are not poor. They're really pretty blessed.
I know.
And we need to all recognize that. And those of us who have more than most really need to understand that our job is to give back.
Yes.
And provide more for those who can't provide for themselves. So whether it's through taxes or contributions or whatever, we need to be doing that with a grateful heart.
Yes. I think everyone should go on one mission trip in their life.
Yeah, to a place like that, to a third world country. You betcha. You betcha.
Yes.
And we're not talking about Cozumel and Cancun, are we?
No, we're not. We're not. Not this time. Nope. But we can serve there in those countries too. But you don't get the same effect going to those countries as you do to Nicaragua and Honduras and the Philippines and going into those environments. I remember my first trip and being on this island where there's no running water, no electricity.
Absolutely.
And seeing these children, and I wanted to just scoop them up and bring them home to America. Like that was my first instinct, and that it hurt my heart so bad to see them. But the longer we were on the island and the longer we played with them and talked to them to the best of our abilities, the more I realized they were so happy. We just needed to help bring them the resources they need in their own place.
Yeah.
I didn't need to save them in that way. They needed to know about Jesus. That's what they needed. And we needed to show our love by providing other resources to them.
And we do. But, it's one of the things that sticks in my mind, and this is kind of odd, but so we have to carry our own food in, on our backpacks or whatever. When we're trekking into these places, and so you get used to eating freeze-dried food, which is you know how that would be.
Oh yeah.
But every once in a while you'll get to a place and they want to prepare food for you, which you have to be careful about.
Right.
But I remember one time they served us chicken, and I was like, and where did that rooster go?
Like the one you just saw?
Exactly. So, they scooped up that rooster that was, and did whatever. And we were eating it 60 minutes later. I'm like, that's a new experience. I've never had that before. So
how was it? Was it good?
It was kind of tough, actually. But, it was when after you're eating beans and freeze-dried or dried food for 3 or 4 days, it tasted pretty darn good.
I bet. It had to smell good, too, to finally smell something fresh.
Yeah.
Now, you have to take your water, too, right? Or a filtration system?
We have to carry your own filtration system. Yeah. Or, you can't backpack your water in too much because that's just too heavy.
Right.
But, yeah.
And you're going way up into the mountains with the pack mules. And
we've done that.
Crossing rivers.
Yeah. So we got to ride mules a little bit, so that was kind of fun.
Yeah.
And you had to backpack. I'll remember one of my first trips into Honduras. We were starting to get into the bush. And so the leader says, be really careful. And why? Well, there's these snakes out here. I said, look for these snakes. I'm like, oh, I don't like snakes. Why? Why do we have to look for these snakes? He says, one bite and you're dead. We can't get you to the hospital quick enough. You will die on this path. And then we walked about 3 miles down the path, or 5 miles, whatever it was. And then there's a cross from a guy who'd been one of us who had passed away.
From the snake bite?
Not from a snake bite. He had a heart attack.
Oh, no.
But I'm thinking, oh my, I'm not sure I'm ready for my cross to be on this trail quite yet.
Right. Oh, that had to be so surreal.
Yeah.
To be standing there and see that cross.
So I think they took his body back to the United States, but they left the cross there as a memory.
Right. Just a reminder.
Yeah.
But it reminds you what you're there for.
It does. And so it's, like I said, it's exciting and it's an adventure, but it's also a worthwhile for me and those that we're ministering to.
And it's really cool to go set up the Jesus film in those camps, in the different little towns. And
except I can't understand a word it says.
Right. We can't, but they can. It's in their tongue.
I can't. It's in Spanish. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. I mean, I can look at the pictures and I have a really good idea, but it's the coolest experience at the end, when they have the opportunity to accept Christ into their heart and to see that happen.
Absolutely.
It's just, I don't know, it's priceless. It puts everything into perspective. And I've always said I never want to forget how I felt coming back from that mission trip.
Absolutely.
And we still have to have those reminders.
That's right. It's time to go back again.
That's right. It is. We need to sign up, Rich. It's time.
Well, right now you can't, but hopefully in the near future.
That's right. Coming soon.
Yes.
Coming soon.
Yes.
Okay, so we kind of touched on this just a second ago about what you love about Greenville, and we kind of summed up your story a little bit with that. But I want to talk for just a second. What specifically does Rich Carter love about Greenville?
Okay. Well, the thing I really love about Greenville is I grew up in a big city. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I grew up in Miami, Florida.
Oh, did you?
So you didn't know that either, did you?
That.
All right.
How fun.
So I grew up in a big city, and so I know the impersonality of a big city. I know that you might know your little neighborhood,
right.
but you don't know many people.
Right.
And many people don't know you. So I know how that feels. So I liked Greenville because it's got a neighborhood family feel on a much larger scale. And so you get the opportunity to meet and know more people than just in your neighborhood, all right? And a lot of great people as well. And so I really like that. And, I like the fact that, it takes a village to raise a child kind of concept, and you get that in a town of this size. And Greenville being close to Dallas has some really nice benefits. But it's far enough away, the thing I really, you can ask my wife, but whenever we go visit my children in Dallas, I'm like, oh my gosh, this traffic. Have I told you lately that I don't like Dallas traffic? Oh yes, honey, every time we go. So, the traffic and the congestion and the people crazy, just the number of people I just can't deal with that too much anymore. I like the smaller town.
Yes.
But we're big enough where we have benefits. I mean, restaurants are good and shopping is good, and unless you want upscale stuff that you go to Dallas for. And we do a lot of physician recruitment, so that's kind of the story that we tell them, that you're far enough away, you don't have to put up with all the traffic. You're close enough where you can access Dallas if you want to. And see some things you can't get in Greenville, but most everything you can get in Greenville.
That's right.
And so I like it for that purpose, and we've met some wonderful people like you.
Yes. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I know we have to give a shout out to Susan and Marlon though, because if we end this and we don't talk about them, they're going to be sad.
That's right.
So we'll share with our audience that my mother-in-law, Susan Hawkins, and your wife, Marlon Carter, are really good friends. And so when you were talking about that tribe and that it takes a whole tribe to raise children, I know they really did that in those years of Alan growing up and Michael growing up together.
That's right.
So
that's right.
They developed that lifelong friendship that you're talking about.
They did. And they're both wonderful people.
They are. I tell her I can't do life without you. I could not do it without her. Well, I asked you to pick a number between 1 and 20 before we hit start.
Here comes the surprise question.
The surprise question. And I'm so glad because you were prepared for another question. Okay. Oh, this is a good one. Number 5. When have you felt the most proud?
As an individual?
Yes.
Gosh, that's a tough one. I think my personal pride, is outside of my own individual activities is like mission trips and things like that is around the kids. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, I've had some pretty amazing children who have done some pretty amazing things. And so I'm really proud of them. So even though they were, really strong academically and really strong athletically, all three of them, what made me the most proud is that they were really strong people, good kids. They're not, even though they were at the top of their class or the top of this or the top of that, they didn't treat others like they were second best. And they treated others like they were equal.
Yes.
And
The golden rule.
The golden rule. And so I'm really proud that they have matured and developed, even through those tough junior high and high school years, where you can be so mean to other people. They were not like that. They were inclusive, and they were helping people to, enjoy the differences between them. And I'm really proud of that.
And that is certainly something to be proud of.
It is.
And that starts at home with you and Marlon.
It is. It does. It does.
Well, and it all starts at the top at the hospital too. And so I'm so glad that you agreed to sit down with me. And I'm so excited people get to see your heart and see another side of Rich Carter, not just the CEO of the hospital, but also a citizen in our community that you've made your home. And
I've enjoyed it. And I appreciate all you do too as well. So I know this takes a commitment, and I appreciate you doing this.
Absolutely. I love it. To be honest, it's one of my favorite things that I do. I love sharing people's stories from our community. So thank you for doing it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching Heart of Greenville. This video series, which is designed to celebrate Greenville, Texas, is spearheaded by REMAX 3D Real Estate.